The moment the words left his mouth, Troy Nehls likely believed they would disappear into the noise of modern politics. A sharp remark, a dismissive insult, a quick soundbite meant to score points with supporters and move on. When he referred to Jasmine Crockett as a nut job, while reacting to rumors of her potential U.S. Senate run, it sounded like just another heated comment in an already divided political climate. But politics has changed. Words don't disappear anymore. They echo. And for Troy Nehls, that single phrase would become the starting point of a chain reaction he did not anticipate. At first, the comment barely registered outside partisan circles. It appeared in clips, headlines, and social media posts, framed as yet another example of aggressive political rhetoric. Nehls seemed unbothered, confident, even amused. He doubled down briefly, brushing off criticism as overreaction and political correctness. But Jasmine Crockett didn't respond the way many expected. She didn't lash out. She didn't trade insults. She didn't demand apologies. Instead, she stayed silent. And that silence would turn out to be far more powerful than any rebuttal. As conversations around her potential Senate run grew louder, the focus began to shift. Analysts stopped talking about the insult itself and started talking about why it was said in the first place. What made Crockett such a target? Why did the idea of her candidacy provoke such a reaction? That's when the tone began to change. Political commentators revisited Crockett's background, her legal career, her courtroom experience, her record in Congress, and her reputation for disciplined, detail-driven questioning during hearings. The same people who had dismissed her began acknowledging her preparation and composure. Meanwhile, clips of Nehls' comment continued circulating, often juxtaposed with Crockett's calm, articulate appearances. The contrast was striking. Crockett spoke in full arguments. Nehls' comment was reduced to a single phrase, and slowly the narrative turned. During a subsequent televised debate-style discussion, Crockett was asked about political attacks and name-calling. She didn't mention Nehls by name. She didn't reference the insult directly. Instead, she spoke broadly about respect in public service, about how dismissive language is often used when substantive arguments are lacking. That moment hit harder than any direct response could have. Viewers noticed. So did journalists. Soon, questions about Nehls' comment began appearing in interviews he couldn't avoid. Each time he attempted to clarify, soften, or redirect. He claimed the remark was taken out of context. He said it was meant jokingly. He said politics was rough, but none of those explanations landed. Because by then, the conversation was no longer about intent. It was about judgment, calling a sitting member of Congress a nut job, especially one rumored to be considering a Senate run, began to look less like confidence and more like insecurity, less like strategy and more like impulse. And that's when the regret became visible. In one interview, Nehls paused longer than usual before answering a question about political decorum. In another, he avoided mentioning Crockett altogether. In a third, he shifted the topic abruptly when her name came up. Observers noticed the pattern. The man who once laughed off criticism now appeared cautious. At the same time, Crockett's public presence continued to grow. She spoke at events, appeared on panels, and addressed policy with clarity and restraint. Each appearance contrasted sharply with the earlier caricature painted by Nehls. Remark. The insult no longer defined her. It defined him. During a congressional hearing weeks later, Crockett delivered a tightly structured argument on accountability and leadership. She cited precedent, challenged assumptions, and maintained composure under pressure. Clips from that hearing went viral, and almost inevitably, someone replayed Nehls' comment alongside it. That was the moment many believe he realized the cost. Because political insults don't age well, especially when the target continues to rise. The phrase nut job began appearing not as a critique of Crockett, but as an example of why serious discourse was breaking down. Commentators used it as a case study in how dismissive language often backfires. Nehls had tried to minimize a political opponent. Instead, he amplified her. As talk of a Senate run intensified, Crockett addressed the public directly. She spoke about ambition, service, and resilience. She acknowledged that public life invites criticism, but emphasized that leadership requires thick skin and steady focus. Again, she never mentioned Nehls. She didn't need to. By then, the damage had already been done. When Nehls was later asked whether he regretted his choice of words, his response was measured but telling. He said he would choose different language if given another chance. He emphasized that political disagreements should focus on policy, not personal attacks. For many, that was the closest thing to an admission they expected. Regret in politics rarely comes as an apology. It comes as restraint. And restraint was exactly what Nehls began showing. Too late to undo the moment, but early enough to avoid repeating it. The episode became a lesson that echoed beyond both individuals. It highlighted how gender, tone, and power dynamics intersect in modern politics. How women, particularly outspoken women, are often dismissed with language that would never be used for their male counterparts, and how those words can become liabilities. Jasmine Crockett emerged from the controversy with increased visibility and credibility. The insult failed to slow her momentum. If anything, it sharpened her public image as someone unfazed by noise and focused on substance. Troy Nehls, meanwhile, became more careful, more scripted, more controlled. The moment he called her a nut job didn't end his career, but it reshaped his approach. Because in politics, you're often remembered not for what you argue, but for what you say when you think no one will hold you accountable. And this time they did. This wasn't a courtroom verdict. It wasn't a formal reprimand. It was something more enduring. A reminder that words matter, that dismissiveness can backfire, and that underestimating an opponent can turn into a lasting regret. Troy Nehls laughed it off at first. But history has a way of replaying moments, especially the ones you wish you could take back. And that's why this moment still follows him, not because of outrage, but because of contrast. One chose insult, the other chose composure. And in the end, the difference spoke louder than the words ever did.